All right, friends, today we're going to be talking about Neptune's last ingress into the sign of Pisces, something that we will never experience again in our lifetime unless some technology is made where life expectancy is going to be about 150 years. If not, this is the last time Neptune's going to cross these waters. And if you pay attention, a lot of us are going into some kind of a reflective mode right now. And I want to approach this video in that same kind of manner. I want us to take a moment to reflect and not just try to predict, because things that have been happening since 2011 are coming to a conclusion. We're supposed to gain some sort of a higher understanding now before we can go back into the sign of Aries. And when you look at what Pisces does and what Aries does, it's like day and night difference. Because Pisces taking all kinds of differentiated parts, bringing them together, merging them, so they cannot be different from each other anymore. It's kind of like taking a droplet of water, throwing it back into the ocean. Where is the droplet? There is no more droplet. It's just the vast ocean. And when we come to Aries, it's like you have to get that droplet of water again. So you have to get that act of differentiation, individuation coming into existence to initiate individual action. So we can see their functions are so different. And for this Neptune to be going from this individuated place back into the cosmic ocean and merging, we're supposed to be figuring something out. So this is not just another retrograde. This is the final sweep of the tides. This is a moment where we're supposed to see what is it that we have not let go of yet. There are things that need to be smoothed out in our life, within our psyche. We're supposed to take this time to reflect to see what still pulls us under. So these are the kind of things that we're going to talk about in this video. And I will make more videos about this because of Neptune going into the sign of Pisces is going to come into conjunction with Saturn again in that sign, as well as other aspects. And if you guys want to watch those videos, subscribe, press the notification button. That way you'll be notified when the videos are released. And this video, like all other videos, are timestamped for your convenience, so you can go back and forth if you need to. Now, without further ado, let us begin. So I was just saying about Pisces being a sign or an environment that's about dissolution. Neptune is also a planet that's the archetype of dissolution. They're both talking about the erosion of boundaries. Neptune is kind of like the fog that blurs all the edges. Things start to seep into each other, merge with each other. It's also making things that are different lose their differentiation. That's why it's related to a planet that's about fantasies, things that are unreal. It distorts reality. And then Pisces is a field of incorporation. And from that comes transcendence. It's almost like whatever that's been created, it must go back to the source. That's what the environment of Pisces is about. So together they're symbolizing something like the oceanic symbol of beingness, the totality of being. It's kind of like everything that we have ever thought about, everything that we've ever dreamt about, all people that we have forgiven, forgotten, all of it. These two archetypes coming together are representing this, is the sum and the totality. Now, let's just take a moment to think about where Neptune's coming from. It's coming back from the sign of Aries, right? Because it's been there for a few months now. And Aries is a very independent sign. It's about igniting, initiating, starting. It's about coming into being. It's about pure existence, existing. That's why Aries has been associated to the phrase, I am. I exist. And part of the condition of existing is to define who you are, but to also know what you are not. And that's exactly what Neptune's going to do by returning back into the sign of Pisces. And what I mean by that is that since Neptune moved into the sign of Aries, we tried to ignite and initiate a lot of things, but we couldn't bring it forth or make it accentuate itself as something distinct, differentiated, individual, to give it that notion of selfhood. And the things that we couldn't do, Neptune's going back to dissolve those things into the ocean of Pisces. So I want you to think back to the first time that Neptune dipped into the sign of Pisces in 2011, and then it came in permanently and stayed there in 2012. Think about the things you had to encounter pertaining to that house where the sign of Pisces is sitting in your chart. What were you able to integrate? I want you to think about the things that have dissolved since 2012 specifically. And I want you to also think about right now in terms of what you're rushing towards, but yet not fully grasping where you're coming from So the edges of where you're going remains blurry. There's still a question mark. These are connecting themselves to Neptune right now. Now, from here forth in the video, I have divided the outline into different phases. I want to talk about the totality of this transit of Neptune back into Pisces and just take us through phase one all the way forward to see what it is that Neptune's trying to do. So phase one, and I've titled this Escape and the False Awakening. So I want you to think back to when Neptune first initiated its ingress into the sign of Aries on March 30th of 2025. And it felt like we were coming out of a fog for a second. Collectively, and a lot of us on an individual level, we had this urge that we have to restart again, rebuild again. This is a new opportunity. There was a hunger for igniting, initiating. We wanted to have a sense of clarity and we wanted to have tremendous amount of movements moving forward. There was an urge that I'm done with the confusion. I just want to move towards clarity. But if we think back since March of 2025, that didn't quite land with a lot of us. And it didn't land because Aries wants to give birth to the self, to that entity that's different than everything else. It is itself. But Neptune came out of the sign of Pisces, carrying the waters of everything that is still unresolved. And many of us discovered that we just can't ignite. Somehow we're still connected to our past. We keep trying to move towards the future, but we're drawn back because of memories, because of these relapses, rebounds, falling off the wagon. And this was happening because we didn't fully dissolve certain things that need to be dissolved before we can have forward movement. This is like the intelligence of the universe telling us not yet. And remember, Saturn was there with Neptune, so that not yet was very pronounced. It's almost as if it's saying, you can't start anew with the debris of the old still hanging off of you. You are not permitted to initiate something new in the sign of Aries by bringing all these old factors into the equation. So Neptune had to retreat. And this is not about punishment. It's a kind of a purification. It's a kind of a closure. It's an opportunity for that. For example, this ingress or regress of Neptune back into the sign of Pisces is going to be asking us, how do we use escape as a substitute for growth in places where we've mistaken relief for progress? For example, some of us bypass grief and try to pretend it was our evolution. Some people have jumped into new relationships, other into new philosophies, ideologies, new dreams about what they want to do. And all of this was to fill a void rather than facing it. And we tried to go into the sign of Aries, masking a lot of our pain through distractions in the past few months, rather than actually being able to see it, what it is and what it is that we need to do. And Aries always wants clarity and courage. It cannot and it does not host delusions. So Neptune sent back symbolically as a way for us to wash ourselves clean before coming into Aries. For example, it wants us to see that the thing that we called love, for example, was just a way of feeling a sense of relief. Or what we call transcendence was just avoidance. It's almost like Aries, like, you're kicked out, go figure out your truth, go wash yourself before you come back into my sign. Like, there wasn't even enough fire in the sign of Aries to purify this, because that's what fire does. It burns off the excess, and all that you're left with is the essence. But after 12 years of Neptune being in that water sign that was creating a lot of illusions and delusions, Aries didn't even have the power to do that. So the environment of Aries is like, go back, get yourself straight, because I just can't accommodate you. That's the kind of feeling you get even when you visually watch the transits since March. Because you can put the chart on a fast forward and you're watching all of this. And with the eclipses now that happened there too, this is a kind of a theme that we're dealing with. And Neptune, we're supposed to go back to see our patterns that are related to escapism, avoidance, our shadows, the projections, things of that nature. Which now takes us to phase number 2, which is about projections. And I've titled this part, The Mirage of Meaning. And this is when Neptune actually goes from the sign of Aries back into Pisces at that critical degrees, the 29-degree Gandanta point, where we have a karmic knot. And I'm saying a lot of us are in a reflective mode right now because we had these dreams since 2012. And when we went into the sign of Aries, they kind of went through this weird metamorphosis that couldn't really take shape. So now with Neptune going back, it's almost as if we have visceral access to them again. But we're also getting a visceral insight into the projections that were related to these dreams. We're starting to see how we had this meaning-making mechanism, whereas before we couldn't do it. We were just kind of living through it. And this is one of the reasons why I am so hesitant to do interpretations for these three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, in terms of our daily events. When people give you transits and interpretations of what's going to happen today, it's hard to do that until these transits are concluding themselves and they're starting to move away out of that house and that sign. That suddenly we get this foresight of, oh my God, these are the things that were happening. That's so crazy. Like Pluto, for example, I had it in my 12th house. When it was happening, kind of had a lot of awful feelings about a lot of things, but couldn't really see the totality of the narrative until Pluto was out of Capricorn and into Aquarius. And I was like, holy smokes, there are those themes that were just so pronounced, but I couldn't put the parts together. And it's the same thing with Neptune. When we were going through it, we were making our dreams and we were having all of these thoughts, fantasies, the escapism, the projections. We couldn't see it. But now it's like we had a little bit of distance from it. We're being put back into that situation. So we're having real-time feelings. So we can start to have imagery of what we've been going through, what has come out of it. And we're saying that we're kind of being pushed and nudged back into those old dreams and fantasies that we had. We're kind of going back to those old way of meaning making, but it's almost as if we're watching it at the same time as a third person. And we're starting to see that so many things that we did since 2012 were actually coping mechanisms, coping with uncertainty, because we couldn't, for example, bear the emptiness. So we started creating and constructing all these crazy stories, and we're kind of going back to those patterns right now. And we got to remember, projection is one of Neptune's favorite tricks. And that's what a projection is we take the stuff that's unprocessed within us, like old desire, old wounds, old ideals, and we just lay them on top of someone else, as if it's something outside of us, as if that is their quality, so that now we can deal with our own problem through another. Like, for example, I'll give you an example of this. People who accuse other people of cheating, where they themselves have the intent to cheat, they will project that onto another person so that they can deal with it externally. It requires a lot of courage, that Aries thing, to take something that's within you and to look at it and say, this is my problem. This is a problem with the sign of Pisces in general. It will do this. And then we have Neptune here was accentuating this, like some of this projection on a collective level, because these planets represent multitude of generation. They're intergenerational planets. So some of these projections would be like looking for a savior out there, new systems, new movements, something that will promise us redemption. So we're taking some internal need that we have, we're projecting it onto society and what it is that society ought to be doing for us. We could have done this individually too, like idealize our lover, idealize our teachers, spiritual gurus, anything that would have helped us avoid the silence, the kind of silence that hurts, but it's asking for self-understanding. When we have self-understanding and self-knowledge, we no longer project. Like, we're about to say something, we'll catch ourselves. We're like, oh my God, that's coming from that feeling of inadequacy. Don't do that. Put it on a shelf, come back to it and deal with it later. But when we don't have that awareness, we will fight with other people. We will idealize other people. It just becomes a crazy situation. And this has been a crazy situation for the past 12 years. Like that first ingress of Neptune into the sign of Pisces, because of our own immaturity about this archetype, we created a lot of illusions for the sake of creating comfort for ourselves. But this time, Neptune going back into the sign of Pisces, the projections are going to come up, acutely come up. But this time, we won't have the opportunity to create these silver linings to internalize them as something acceptable. This time's Neptune's job is to reveal those projections. We're supposed to feel the discomfort this time when we're doing it, when society's doing it, when other people are doing it. It's trying to make us see through the outer mirage what is still unresolved and unsolved within us. And within other people around us that we're dealing with. Like, look at where the sign of Pisces is sitting in your chart. It might be talking about other people. And part of our illusion for the past 12 years has been to justify the actions of others, for example, or what we have been doing to others. That's what the reflection of this moment is about. What was our parts? How do we conspire with other people? And one way to understand this is for us to sit down right now and have a little bit of self-inventory. For example, we can ask ourselves, where do I have expectations of other people to carry my emotions, to carry my unlived emotions, so I have a sense of existence, so I feel that I'm living, is vicariously living through others, right? Is using others and instrumentalizing them, so you get a sense of the experiences, the dreams that you want to have, instead of you doing it, rolling up your sleeve and going to work like the way we would have to do in the sign of Aries to ignite and to initiate. But if for the past 12 years, we may have very well designated these things to other people to carry our emotional burden for us. That's a projection. Or another question that we can use, where am I using other people to fill that emptiness and that void within myself? And a lot of people deal with this emotion. It's like, I cannot sit with my, like, they'll be calling someone up, but not because they want to see them, not because they want to talk to them. They'll even call up the wrong person. But just anything or anyone to fill this empty void, or breaking up with someone and going right away to another relationship because I just can't sit with myself and that void and that emptiness. So these are some of the questions that we can ask ourselves, and we can see how, when, and where we are projecting. And it's going to become easier this time because I'm telling you, these feelings are going to become more explicit. It's like, yeah, I'm calling this friends. They're not really even my friend. I don't even really like them. There's a moment where you're torn, whereas in the past, you would just do it. And something in our subconscious is now informing the conscious mind, saying, we want to create real connections, not a bunch of mirage. Because we're coming to understand, we've been in the sign of Aries, that hot, steamy environment that evaporates waters, the illusions that this mirage is going to fade once when I have to go back into the sign of Aries. I have to get to the bottom of this, which brings me to phase 3, which is about disillusionment, which is about the collapse of fantasies. So we can imagine this time frame. Now Neptune has been in the sign of Pisces for, let's say, a couple of weeks onwards. And I got to say, it doesn't sound good. Like, no one would admit that I like having illusions or that I have illusions. But when it comes to the disillusionment of those illusions and we watch our own resistance, that we understand through that resistance, and Saturn's there again. So we're going to feel this. Through that resistance, we start to understand that, oh my God, so many of my thoughts were just fantastical thinking, magical thinking. And this is a phase, again, because Saturn's sitting there. The glamour that we had given our dreams and our fantasies start to be stripped away. The fog starts to recede, and we're starting to see what's really on the other side. The planet of reality, Saturn, the boundary, the end of illusions, everything is sitting right beside Neptune, and Neptune's keep getting closer to Saturn. And you know, when you're looking at something through the fog because you can't exactly make out what's on the other side, you've been now given a free license to imagine what's on the other side. So a lot of our imaginings are coming to a clash with reality of how we thought life is supposed to be, how things were supposed to turn out. So some of us might find ourselves that we're having a crisis of faith or self-trust in this moment. But I think it'll be good to have a perspective shift where we see it as a process of refinement right now. It's just that our ideals are being tested for truth. And the collapse of our old fantasies don't necessarily mean we're just like going to be in a state of destitution. We don't know what the hell we're going to do from here forth. All that it means is that the totality of us as we are is ready to finally stand without disguise, for better and for worse. And you know, on a collective level, this could show up in terms of failure of systems that we had put our trust in, failure of political systems, spiritual, and even technological systems. Individually, they might appear as heartbreak, disappointment, or just exhaustion. Because you know, when they say ignorance is bliss, it doesn't exhaust you when it's still ignorance. You're just going through it as a matter of fact. Well, this is how life is. This is just how you do things. But when you start getting awareness in your minds, every word every sound, every gesture becomes something that's energy consuming because we're noticing it. And because we're noticing it, now it requires us to change things. And that requires further consciousness and conscientiousness. And what the mind is trying to do is trying to create integration. And this can feel exhausting a lot of times. So this is one of the prominent feelings that can go with this time. And again, we have Saturn in the mix. Saturn is lethargic, it's slow, it's about feeling sad. So to come to a realization that, hey man, I actually trusted this person that I was idealizing and I thought they could make me feel a certain way and they're not doing it. But now I'm saying that I should have been doing that for myself all along and I don't even know how to do that. How do I do that and how do I not project? These kinds of things are exhausting. But it's the way to go from the bliss of ignorance to enlightenment of knowing, which actually liberates you from the pain and the suffering of that thing for the entirety of your life, and if you believe in many lifetimes, for the preceding lifetimes. And the sign of Pisces is a moksha sign, is a water sign, so it's related to moksha. So we are being liberated from such things. But that liberation requires work. That kind of enlightenment requires awareness that's initially exhausting until it's embodied and it's entrenched in us. And Neptune going back into the sign of Pisces and conjuring up all of our old ways, it's going to force us to feel the ache underneath our ideals. We'll feel the ache of that person that thought that could save me. They can't actually save me. And I feel pretty helpless right now. Maybe we'll see that the dream that we were trying to build was actually built on top of denial. In general, with this kind of an ingress transit, the disillusionment that is coming up is very painful. It hurts us. And that's because it's dismantling the old scaffolding that was holding everything up. And we needed to have those things. We shouldn't be judgmental because we were trying to negotiate and grapple with uncertainty. We were trying to survive the uncertainties of the past 12 years. But we don't need these scaffoldings anymore. We actually need them to submerge back into the Pisces water, dissolve, because we're going to go back into the sign of Aries, act. And part of that action is to build new scaffoldings that will hold us. And that's why Saturn's going to accompany Neptune back into the sign of Aries. And this brings us to phase number 4, which is about confrontation, which is going to be a mirror of accountability. And this is very much related when Neptune and Saturn are very close to each other, which I will talk about in other videos. So after disillusionment, when we have the consciousness for it and we start dissolving those illusions, those projections. So when we are finding ourselves that, hey, I'm getting this consciousness of what I was doing, I'm having this awareness, and there has to be this disillusionment. We can only go through the process if we can confront certain things. So this is the part where we're standing in front of the mirror of our own being, and we're becoming aware of ourselves and what it is that we're doing, individually or as a society. And through this mirror, we're going to start saying that that thing that I was chasing was never about love or freedom. It was relief from pain of separation, from loneliness, again, emptiness. We weren't trying to unite with the divine. We were trying to escape the discomfort of being human. And I want us to remember confrontation does not have to include guilt, because this is one of the things that could happen. When we come to see ourselves and the things that we've done and who we've become, the things that we projected, the ways that we've hurt and used other people, it can bring up a lot of feelings of guilt and shame. But this is not what this moment is about. It's actually about taking the responsibility for where we've been, what we've done, and where we've arrived. And Saturn's sitting there. It's going to make sure that we are held accountable. And that part of that accountability is just for us to understand how we have conspired in building these illusions. I don't know, got a thumbs up, but that's not a thumbs up comment. I mean, we have to see where we have abandoned discernment for the sake of transcendence, so for the sake of having our dreams fulfilled. And it is in these moments of confrontation that things get so tense, where if you have any kind of proneness to addiction, obsessive thoughts, obsessions in general, spiritual bypassing, they all come into play. This is the point where a lot of people fall off the wagon. And I encourage you, just hold on to the wagon. Even if you fall off, just get back on. Because a lot of those old addictions could have been to create disillusion, not to see ourselves. And now those stories, we're coming to see that they can't save us, they can't hold us, and they have come at a great cost. So that could make us want to disengage, because we're still talking about Neptune in Pisces. So it's good not to fall back into cycles like that. Or there could be cycles of victimhood, comfort and being a martyr, self-sacrificing yourself, giving the entirety of your life force to someone else, where compassion is actually about erasing yourself, so you don't have to deal with yourself. So these are the things that this confrontation is going to make us grapple with. And you know, on a collective level, we're seeing this already. And that confrontation is about exposing how easily humanity trades awareness for ideology, just to have a sense of belonging, to fit in. We're a tribe, we're a group. So in a lot of ways, Neptune is showing us that sense of longing that we have for salvation, for being saved. And it's almost as if it's asking us, can you have faith in life? Can you have trust in yourself and your life, in this sphere of your life, the house where sign of Pisces is sitting in, without surrendering your humanity, yourself, your discernment, your consciousness, your awareness? So this phase about the confrontation, looking at oneself in the mirror, is very raw, but it is the pivot point. Because it's only when we see our own participation in an illusion, we can start to transform it, to get a grip on it, to do differently, to do that cleansing that the sign of Aries asked Neptune to do by going back. And this brings us to phase 5, which is about transformation. It's about dissolution of those illusions and understanding the wisdom that we can gain from all of this. And this is an alchemical stage. So when the confrontation has happened, the waters can begin to clear. Neptune's dissolution here becomes something sacred. And this is again occurring around right when Neptune's about to dip back into the sign of Aries. And this is a phase where we're going to stop chasing reflections and start to embody the truth that are within them. We start to understand that the transformation that we were looking for the first time we went into the sign of Aries can only come about when illusions die. This phase is about integration. And you know, I've said this in the last video about Venus in Libra. Part of Venus's symbols being related to pleasure and beauty has to do with the fact that it's talking about things that are integrated, united. That means a whole where all the parts are working together in concert. And when we have this state of being, it is devoid of pain. It's the opposite of it. It brings about pleasure. So when a lot of our illusions and delusions, they're like instant gratification. They make us feel very good now, but in the long run, they're creating a lot of pain because they're actually disintegrating our sense of self from our narrative, from our identity, from our environments. So this phase of Neptune is actually about integration. And we'll actually come to see that we don't need to prove our sense of worth through constantly demonstrating pain to other people, that we're suffering, that we need to be saved. This is a point where we're going to stop seeking attention as validation. We can start to feel our own value. And one of the hardest things to do in life as a human being, just because of the way we're built, is to go through this life without being witnessed. And so much of our illusions are made because we want to be witnessed. Another word for that we use nowadays is for existence, what we do, who we are, to be validated, for our pain to be validated, for the things that we do that are good. But imagine being so whole and so integrated that you feel witnessed because you know your own value. And if you think about it, this is the moksha of Pisces in motion, because there's no more differentiation between you as form and the embodiment of that form, your identity, and then how you act it out. Everything's just working in concert. You feel grounded here. There's no longer a need for escape. You can just be in your body. You can be in yourself. Dreams are not rooted in some hypothetical future place of when you become that and when you are that. It's rooted in the now. It's like conscious navigation of self while we're navigating life. And this is the exact kind of clarity that Aries was asking Neptune, and it's like, out of here, man. You're not coming here till you get this straight. Aries is like, I might want a hero, but I don't want a martyr who's doing that, and they don't even understand why they're doing it. It's like, go back, get your stuff straight. So in some ways, we can look at Neptune coming back with its imagination anchored in reality. And I will talk about this in another video. And Saturn there is helping this process also. And this brings us to step number 6, which is preparation for authentic individuation this time, the second time when Neptune comes back into the sign of Aries. So finally, we're going to come back to integrate. And what does this integration and authentic individuation look like in the sign of Aries? So Neptune, as it went back, everything that it dissolved, everything that we learned, it becomes about now how do we weave it back into life to give life its animation and its movement. In a lot of ways, we are preparing for individuation when we come back in the sign of Aries. And our dreams need to be individuated to become something real in the world. And we couldn't initially do this because they weren't even our dreams. While we were in the sign of Pisces, yeah, we could sit on a couch, smoke a joint, think about it, talk to other people. But when we came into the sign of Aries, we're like, okay, I'm supposed to actually act this out. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So we've got some clarification. So now we can ignite. All right, so we're coming to the closing. I'm just going to recap quickly how we traveled through the 6 phases. We started with escapism and escape, to projection, to disillusionment, and then we arrived to confrontation, transformation, and finally integration. This is like Neptune's pilgrimage back into the sign of Pisces. This is Neptune returning back, giving us an opportunity to gather the fragments that were left unresolved, that we couldn't move into the future with all these fragmented, nonsensical parts of our past. This regress of Neptune is about dissolving what cannot endure. And what cannot endure is usually not the truth. It may be a convenient truth for the moment, but not the kind of truth that can carry you through time and the entirety of your life. This is kind of like a last call to release things that were never really ours, to let old grief complete their cycle, to forgive the parts where we use things and people escape instead of awakening. If we could have, we would have. We didn't because we didn't know how yet. And we got to remember when Neptune comes back into the sign of Aries, we are not going to be seeking escape, even though it's Neptune. We will want to seek what it means to exist. And this is where transcendence becomes embodiment, where the infinite of Pisces meets the finite of Aries and understands how this is a continuum, how they are contingent, and how they actually work together. And when we think about it, our dreams are kind of infinite. The application for them have that sense of finitude. They're finite, and we have to understand this dynamic and dance. And Neptune going back, clearing certain things, we're understanding this relationship. It's this relationship that allows us to incarnate our dreams actually into something real. And before a last word, if you guys like the content of this video, please do remember to like, subscribe, and comment. I'd love to know what's happened to you guys for the past 12 years. I know for me, it was crazy. And the craziest part is, when Neptune was getting to the end of its cycle, it abruptly brought certain things into a conclusion. So I'm just wondering if you guys had similar experiences, especially with these planets that will only happen once in a lifetime. As an astrologer, always doing research, gotta talk to people. So let me know. I'd love to know your experiences. And if you guys want a reading from me, you can go to the links in the description box below or to parisayazdi.com. And now to close, I'm going to say, let us allow this regress of Neptune be our cleansing and our closure. Let us accept all that has happened and all that was. Let us let things be, let certain things go, because the fire of Aries is demanding. It requires courage, and it will not carry fantasies. It wants presence. It cannot accommodate projections. It wants a self that remembers what it's like to be in the ocean and to emerge from it. But it cannot accommodate those of us who want to drown in it. And I hope that when we come back into the sign of Aries, we have clarity of dreams, thoughts, and the readiness to ignite. That's it for today. Sending you much love. Till next time.